inequities, and we are so grateful he took the time to join us today. Dr. Lateef, I am honored to invite you to the podium to deliver the commencement address for the DMU class of 2024.
Thank you all, and I appreciate the opportunity and the fact that people told me to just riff as long as I wanted to speak. Good morning, everybody, and thanks for having me. First, let me congratulate all the graduates of the class of 2024, and welcome to all your family and friends. I'm Omar Lateef, the President and CEO of Rush University Health Center and the Rush Medical Center. I am more humbled than any of you know to be standing here today. This is where I started my life in so many ways, and I'll talk through that in the next hour and 7 minutes of this presentation. I am thrilled to see so many faces in the crowd. Support systems are incredibly important. They are the people who really care about you and keep you focused on doing what's right. So before I barrage into a speech that I'm confident 94% of you, according to data, will have no recollection of, I would like to take just a moment for the graduates to clap and thank your friends and family. For those keeping track of time, please subtract that from my presentation. Each of you graduates will be entering some form of healthcare, of a healthcare system that is profoundly in need of innovation, ingenuity, dreams, and most importantly, courage. Doing what is right cannot be wrong, but it is surprisingly challenging, especially in healthcare. To that end, I'm going to talk today about blocking out the noise. You must have your own vision. Otherwise, you will follow the voice of whatever the loudest voice is in a room, and that will often not be yours. If you don't know what I mean, think about the last time you were with a group of friends and didn't really care about where you wanted to eat. Whoever had the loudest voice chose the restaurant, and that's where you ended up. There's a real chance that you wanted to go somewhere else, but you didn't verbalize it, have your vision, or choose it. That may be okay for a restaurant last night. It is not okay for how you practice healthcare in the rest of your life. You have to know what to listen to, who to listen to, and when to trust yourself and block out the noise. To explain this, I'm going to tell you about my riveting journey that started in Youngstown, Ohio. When I said riveting, you were supposed to laugh. Thank you. I'll prompt you until you get it naturally. I'm a second-born, and that's where my problems began. My older brother was very popular, smart, and seemingly invited to all the parties in school. I was constantly compared to my older brother, who got straight A's and won awards and went to the honors classes. I, on the other hand, was normal. I was reserved, private, and as a student, profoundly average. I was not what my son would describe today as what's up. I threw that in because I was talking to one of the graduates before, and I promised I would say what's up. I lacked confidence, but I had dreams. I was scared to share those dreams with anybody. I read a lot of books and used to memorize inspirational speeches. Shocking, I had little weekend plans. I never could find my way into the honors classes. I wanted to be there but never made it, and in a way, that typecast you as much as making it to those classes. I had some friends, but many of them were the kind that I had to call first. I told one of them once I wanted to be a doctor, and a couple days later he told me it was really hard to get into med school and that I probably wouldn't get in. We all have these friends. You know what I'm talking about, and if you don't, you are lying to yourself right now. Your plan will be your plan and not the plan of the people around you. I only learned later that my friend was part of the noise. He cannot define my path. I would have to define my path. So I went quietly off to college to a pretty good small school in Maine. I was excited to leave Youngstown, get a new start, and figure out who I was. Shortly after getting to school, I had my first experience with my least fun game in the world. It is called the Where You From game. You will play this a lot as you expand your academic careers. The Where You From game is the ultimate flex game. It's when you sit in a room of people and you go around in a circle and tell everybody where you're from. Only no one says where they're from. They talk about all the big things they've done. In those conversations, I always felt like I didn't have enough to say. When I got to school, everybody had these flex stories. They were star athletes from famous high schools. They even used the word summer as a verb. I did not. You understand what I'm saying? I lost the where you from game that day. I walked away, and I was there, but I wasn't there. I struggled a little bit in school. I went to class. One of those was organic chemistry. I loved organic chemistry. I loved it so much I took it 3 times. That is a story for another time that most of your mentors will not tell you, but they all have that story. After about 1.5 years in Maine, I went to my room one day, looked out the window. It started raining. It was dark. Without talking to anyone, I packed my stuff up, went down the stairs, and started loading my car. I eventually drove away. It literally was like a scene out of a movie. It was raining and dark, and there was lightning, and all the people were like, why is this dude packing his car? And started standing by the windows looking out. This was the first time I dropped out of college. I went home to shocked but wonderful parents who pretended that everything would be fine. I did not want to see many people because everyone asked me what I was doing. I didn't have a story, and the noise was too loud. I had no idea that it was the noise that was hurting me, but that was the first time I dropped out of college. My parents had a great idea. They said, take some time off. I went abroad, and they enrolled me in school in our home country of Pakistan. I lasted there a solid 4 months. That was the second school I dropped out of. I packed, flew home, showed up without a plan. I enrolled in some summer classes, finished what would have been my second year of college at Youngstown State University, where my father was a professor, and then met a professor from the University of Florida who was telling me how great that school was. All I wanted to do was get out of my town. I did not want to run into people. I did not want to bump into people. And the worst thing that I wanted to do was not go to one of the functions of my neighborhood with my parents, one of their parties. That was awful because there was so much noise. I went to the University of Florida and I started to learn a lot about life there. I learned a lot about going to the registrar's office and trying to get all my credits to count. There was really no one helping me, but I didn't have a lot of friends when I first got down there. It was eerily quiet, but for the first time I was able to focus on what I wanted to do. I started doing a little better in class. I got decent grades. I finally got a B in organic chemistry, so I didn't drop it that time. Thank you. And I worked towards graduation, and I started to believe maybe I could become a doctor. That's what I really wanted to do. My degree was in religion. I wrote papers and papers about changing the word history to herstory. I did all kinds of crazy things, but I wasn't ready to go to med school yet. So I went to my advisor. You know advisors. Raise your hand if you know what an advisor is. Go ahead. Just work with me. Thank you. The rest of you should not get your degree. Advisors are fantastic. They mean well, but they also tend to follow data. And if you look at the data, and I'm sitting in front of you, the data tells you you dropped out of 3 schools, you transferred a bunch of classes, your degree's not really your traditional medical track. I think you should take some time and really think about what you want to do. There was more noise. Your friends and family, even the people that love you, have a tendency to tell you things that bring you down without meaning it. I left, I was depressed, but I was able, for the first time, to start to say, well, what if? What if I tried anyway? What if I applied anyway? What would happen? So I applied, and I applied broadly, and I got accepted to Des Moines University. It was one of the single greatest moments of my life, checking my mail, opening it. We used to get mail. I checked my mail, I opened it up, and I was like stunned. I was shaking. I called my parents, I called my brother. He didn't care. He was still cool. He was probably on a date. And I celebrated the moment. It was big. For me, it meant I had a story. I had a dream. It started to come true, and I was going to go get to take care of people. So I had one of the best summers of my life. I started hanging out. I started actually having better relationships. They were less toxic. People around me started to believe in me, and I started to believe in myself. And then I got to Des Moines. Des Moines. I got to orientation, and you know what they do at orientation? They play the where you're from game. So the first part of orientation was fine. It was like just right on Grand Avenue. And then at lunch, there was a bunch of people got together, and we decided we were going to go to Burger King. And we cut through some buildings, and there was a Burger King right down a hill. I don't know if that's still there, if you know what I'm talking about. But we left the medical center and went to Burger King, and I'm sitting there, and I ordered two 99-cent Whoppers. That was big. I got a water, and I put Sprite in it, and I was sitting at my chair getting ready to eat, and we started playing the Where You From game, and we went around, and all the people around me had like a master's degree in anatomy. There were like, one was a teacher in biochemistry, so it was a teacher in science, but was a biochemist. And I'm sitting here in there thinking, oh, I took the bare minimum and got an average score on all my tests. I'm done. Like, I felt so small. I stopped eating. I remember throwing away a Whopper and a half and just tossing my drink and like moping back to school. And then I said, all right, let me collect myself. Let me figure this out. Oh, we'll be all right. And then I went to histology class. And I understand that Dr. Canby is in the audience. He has no recollection of me. Dr. Canby, I remember you very well. I went to this histology class, and it was like in this small room in this older building. And we went down, and he started showing slides of cells. And I started writing in very plain vernacular in English what I thought he was describing, so that when I got home, I could look in the textbook and match them up. So he would say, this is a red blood cell, and I'd write red squiggly lines, some white dots, some things like that. So just really plain English. Then he does white blood cell, a couple other cells. This is like one of my first classes. And then he does this, then he gets to slide 9. It's an erythrocyte. He describes that, and I write it all down. And then the lecture ends, and he says, are there any questions? So I raise my hand because I'm confused. And I said, Dr. Canby, for slide 1, the red blood cell, and slide 9, the erythrocyte, you kind of described them almost exactly the same. So the entire room started laughing. So a red blood cell and erythrocyte are the same thing. I did not know. A kid named George tapped me on the shoulder and said, laugh. So I started laughing, and we went through it. I remember going home in that drive to my little apartment, sitting there going, I'm done. Like, I'm done. But something happened when I was here. I grew up. I had a good group of friends. I had a great group of teachers. And I had advisors that really didn't care about anything that's happened to me, but just told me that you could probably do whatever you want to do. Pick a field, work hard, go do it. I had a great experience in Des Moines. I didn't have as much noise. And I started to find a voice inside. I applied to residencies. I got accepted to New York University Downtown Hospital. And when I graduated, I was sitting here, like all of you, waiting for the ceremony to end, yawning, praying that the commencement speaker would stay on track, which I'm clearly not. Thinking, I can't wait to get out of here to get started. I wanted to get started. I wanted to turn the page on everything that happened to me and go see what I can do. And when I matched in New York, I thought, that's it. This is my chance. I'm going to go out. I'm going to prove myself. I could do this. I could figure this out. And I got ready. I got excited. We went through commencement. I didn't win any awards. I didn't have any special tassels. I had nothing. I was average, but I had a great experience, and I learned more than I ever thought I'd learned before. I left, and I went to that summer was a great summer. It was peaceful. It was quiet. I didn't do much, hung out, and I went to start residency on July 1st. Prior to starting residency, we had orientation. In orientation, we had our BLS and ACLS certification, and all the New York University hospitals were together. And they got this great idea where we would all break up into groups and get to know each other. That was the most painful Where You From game I've ever played. So I'm sitting in the room, and we're going around the circle, and everybody kind of knew each other. They were from the same schools. There was a guy named Phil. He was from Brown. He went to an 8-year program. He knew the person next to him who left Brown because she didn't like it. She thought it was hampering her growth and went to Columbia for medical school. There was an international grad, and I was like, yeah, that's good. He's from Cambridge. I remember as the room got circle and circle, I thought, is this life? I'm going to play Where You From games for the rest of my life? One was an opera singer. Someone else was a decathlete. Like, what the hell was I? I was like, this was supposed to be my time. I just graduated. This was my time. So that was a hard year. At the end of that orientation, one of the kids, Rennie, said, let's go grab something to eat at the South Street Seaport near where we were. I flat out lied. I said, oh, I got some friends coming in from out of town. I gotta go catch up. They're like, oh yeah, that's cool, because it was big to have friends out of town, New York. And I went to the Barnes & Noble in Union Square and I started reading. I started reading Harrison's textbook of medicine. I decided that day I was not quitting anymore. I was not going to transfer anymore. I was not going to go home and say to my parents, I dropped out again. I had to make this work. And it was just going to work. And I remember sitting there alone in this bookstore trying to memorize this giant book. And I started going to work an hour early, 2 hours early. I started staying an hour late, 2 hours late. I memorized everybody's patients, not just mine, but I did it in a way that nobody would know. I didn't want to be branded, but I was so scared I would fail. I just kept working and working and working. I wasn't driven by the fact that I was brilliant. I was driven by a fear of not knowing something or not knowing enough. Well, at the end of the first year, and this is where it's coming to an end, I promise, at the end of the first year, they have this award ceremony. And if you don't know by now, I hate award ceremonies. I hate them because they recognize so few when so many do so many amazing things. They recognize so few, and the people in the audience that maybe have been average like me may go on to change the world, but you don't know it. We don't tell you. We forget. We just recognize a few of the award ceremony. So I'm really good at an award ceremony is zoning out because I've never won one. So in the middle of the award ceremony, they're going through all the residents of the year, this faculty, and they said intern of the year for the NYU system, and they named my name. I never won anything before, and I was so stunned. I was literally trying to eat as much as I could because it was free food at the time. And I had a mouthful of food, and I got up shaking, and I thought it was almost a joke. When I was getting to the podium, my program director said, maybe Omar realizes now he always deserved to be here. I thought it was a great secret. I didn't think anybody knew. To this day, the only award I have sitting in my desk is the Intern of the Year award. I don't care about anything else. That was an inflection point for me. It was a point where I realized that I belonged. The world was a meritocracy. And if I stopped listening to everybody tell me what I can or can't do, perhaps I could do something productive. I told you at the beginning of this, healthcare is hard. It is incredibly hard. I told you that doing what is right takes courage. I'll explain that in the last 2 to 3 minutes here, which is really 5 to 6. I had my first vision. The vision was I could make something better. I could change something. I started to trust it. I stopped listening to everybody else's vision because I said at the beginning, if you don't know what you're trying to do, what everybody around you says they're doing is what you're going to end up doing. I started truly blocking out the noise. As I took that attitude into my fellowship and through my career, I ended up getting the next job, the next job, the next job, because I loved what I was doing. I couldn't believe I had the privilege of taking care of human beings in any capacity. I couldn't believe that I got to work at a team and try to make a difference. I couldn't believe that people would listen to me if we tried to make an impact. But if it worked, you'd get more and more and more opportunity to make an impact. Well, I've been serving as the CEO of Rush since 2019. I believed then that Rush could be the best in quality and all people deserve the same quality. I have no business training. Words like operating margin, debt covenants, and EBITDA, which is a ridiculous word pronounced 7 different ways that nobody knows what it means, had no value to me. And I took over as a CEO and thought, all right, we're going to revolutionize healthcare. We're going to be the best in quality, and we're going to make sure everybody has the same access to the quality that we're going to give. This year, Rush was rated number 2 in quality. While people laughed when we said we would be number 1, we were number 1 in 2021. We've dropped all the way down to 2. We are a top 20 hospital in America in the U.S. News and Honor Roll, and we've been on it 4 years in a row. Everything that we do, all the care that we provide is provided through an equity lens, and we speak with action and not words. We believe that our goal is to improve the life expectancy of our community. It's a gap in Chicago based on haves and have-nots. If you're born on Michigan Avenue today, you live 16 years longer than if you're born in the neighborhood around our hospital. We decided we would change that. We decided that doing what is right cannot be wrong. That was the vision and the mission we took to our medical center. And when the pandemic started, it gave us an opportunity to prove what we believed in. The commitment was our foundation to our approach of treating COVID-19. You had to live under a rock to not know that there was a 3 times higher mortality in this country in Black and brown people than in Caucasians. When the mortality in the US was that, we decided that we would open our hospital up and improve access to our neighborhood where the mortality was higher. We took hundreds and hundreds of transfers during the first surge. Our mortality was amongst the best in the country. There was nothing magical about the health care we provided. There was something magical about providing it. We believe that health care is a human right. I believe that health care is a human right. And I was stunned as a CEO, a board let us do it. I was stunned as a leader, people would follow if you had conviction in what you were doing. We lost more money in my first year as a CEO than we'd ever done before. In fact, my predecessor had 17 years in positive outcomes, and in my first year, I lost $242 million. I was sure I was going to get fired. I got a solo stove and would sit in the back of my yard and just feel sorry for myself. But at the same time, I couldn't believe we were changing the outcome of an entire city. 2 secretaries of health ended up coming to visit us, and the President of the United States thanked us. They thanked me. I hate the where you from game. I didn't believe I could do it. I didn't think I was good enough at any point in my life. And for the first time, every time, there was one inflection point and another where I started to believe. I could sit here now and talk about self-congratulatory thoughts on how confidence and perseverance earned me a seat in the CEO suite. None of that would be true. None of that really actually matters to any of you as you reflect on everything you've achieved and you stare into your future. I think it is more important now to find your voice, to find your Hudson, than it has ever been before. I'm going to close with one story of Captain Sully. This is my last page for those who are looking at their schedules and realize that I've gone too long. For that, I apologize. But I really am excited to be here in front of you. I'm really excited to be here in front of students that struggled as much as me, but we don't talk about it as much. So I want to tell you about Captain Sully because you've probably seen his movie, but you don't know that it's real. Captain Sully was an Air Force pilot who fought in wars. He knew how to fly an F-16. He knew how to fly planes upside down and at high rates. And he was a senior pilot working at American Airlines. He took off at LaGuardia on a morning. As he took off, he had a bird strike, and that's pretty common. Turns out when that happens, you call air traffic control. Now, I want you to think about what I said about advisors and replace them with air traffic control. These are people that follow a protocol. You hit bird strike, engine down, turn around, and come back to LaGuardia. Captain Sully said, I can't. We had both engines down. And the advisor said, well, no, I'm sorry, that doesn't happen. That's not on my list. See, because you're allowed to have a single bird strike, but they hadn't had a double bird strike before, right? So then he says, well, that's all right. The default is to go back to the guidelines. Step 2 was go ahead and land in Newark. And he said, negative, I'm declining too fast. He's effectively gliding at this point in the plane. So he's gliding in the plane, and it's kind of going like this. And then the air traffic control says, why don't you land at Teterboro? He says, negative, if I turn, because I'm gliding, I'll go straight down. And he pauses in his head. He says, I'm turning you to listen only, and I'm finding the Hudson. That was not on the protocol. Now, the rumors are that he turned down the voice so they could hear him, but he didn't listen to anybody else. That is blocking out the noise. He landed in the Hudson. He landed so softly, people on the plane didn't even realize they had landed. They got off in rescue boats, and instead of being a hero, he was castigated for not following a protocol. Eventually, he was a hero. The reality is that he knew, after flying in wars, how to fly that plane better than anybody else at that moment in time. He was in it, and he knew, and he had to trust himself. He had to block out the noise. And if he could block out the noise and land the plane and save those lives off protocol, then hell, all of us should be able to figure out how to do the same thing. All of you have done incredibly well sitting here today. You all know how to fly, and you all know how to land. Many of you are at different parts of your journey in trusting yourself. You have to trust yourself and know when to listen and when to find the Hudson. You have to strive every day to block out the noise from high school, to block out the noise from college, and the noise from the counselors, the family, and the friends that even if well-meaning, misdirect you from your vision and who you want to be. Healthcare is a calling. It is a human right. Let that be your true north as you make your mark in this world. I said at the beginning, I'm honored to be here, because when I walked out of this building, I felt like for the first time I could go make an impact and make a change. I have nothing but thanks for the administration for inviting me for an opportunity to speak to you, and nothing but admiration for the courage that you're going to have as you go out and change the world for the parts that we have not done. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.